All right. Hello. So for our inclusive technology summit, we decided to focus on OneNote versus Evernote and do a comparison between them with some pros and cons of using each in a classroom setting. And we first discussed as a group, before we even made this Prezi, what it means to have a technology be inclusive. So we thought of the fact that it must be user-friendly for people who speak languages other than English. We talked about how note-taking is super important in the classrooms and how simply handing students the notes is not as efficient as them taking their own notes in a way that they'll understand. Like people who speak English will be able to write on a piece of paper notes that they will be able to read later and understand. People who don't speak English should be able to do the same thing. So directly off the syllabus too, we knew that if a tool is going to be considered really inclusive, it would essentially make differentiated instruction easier for teachers. So let's get started.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, let me get into the first kind of slide here. Okay, so I guess to start us off, we chose, as you can see from our intro, our inclusive technology is a piece of software. It's an application. We're choosing OneNote. This is what we're showcasing to you. The inclusive technology is OneNote, but in kind of dissecting what OneNote is, we decided to kind of compare it to something that's of very equal value in a lot of ways. It's hit or miss as to which one you use, but it's Evernote. So we're focusing on OneNote, but we're going to kind of go through a comparison. So for OneNote, the biggest thing, the accessibility to it is amazing. It's not behind any real walls. The basic application is free. Syncing it with Office and all the Microsoft collaboration with Office and the Google Docs, you have to own Microsoft Office to be able to do that. But in a lot of cases, it's not a big deal. It comes standard on a lot of computers. All the students are using Office on the Lenovo's and all the laptops and the boards. So written text on a page, the student can plug in headphones and listen to an audio version. So if they type something or if they're in a group and someone's typing something, they can actually have their audio plugged in. Clipping, so you can take anything from the internet, an image or a text, and you can transfer it right into your OneNote page, and it'll actually find text inside of those images. So looking kind of at Evernote, and also OneNote has a cloud management system, which we'll go over, but Evernote really focuses on its cloud management system. It's its own little server, it's its own thing, whereas with OneNote, it's connected to the Microsoft world and the cloud of Google Docs and OneDrive. So as far as the accessibility goes, it's a lot greater with OneNote, which is why we've chosen it. Evernote has a lot of mobile traction because it comes preloaded on a lot of Android phones. Almost everyone's mobile device comes preloaded with Evernote, and it's a very fast application because it's so small and it's not connected to anything else. It's its own entity. It's just a very fast, accessible application as well. And OneNote is also, but as far as it's constantly downloading your data, it's constantly putting it into the cloud. So as far as accessing it, it can be a little bit more time consuming. So for OneNote, looking at inclusion, because it has a wider user base, it makes it inclusive in itself. It has a big translation angle, which we're going to speak more about. So it basically supports Microsoft Translate, which is a product that allows you to type in any language and then translate it into whatever language. So it's been around for years and it's getting bigger. What else do we have? So you can also, of course, record your audio as well. So if a student wants to just use audio notes, they can just speak into their mic and it'll actually transition it into text, and it's fairly accurate as well. So one thing before I pass it off with Evernote that was really interesting is when you scan a picture or an image, it actually looks for readable text in that image, and it actually tries to make it searchable, and it has a really high accuracy as well. So I'm going to pass it off to Hannah here, who's going to kind of dissect more of the classroom connections and the real world connections to being a teacher with it.
Thanks so much, Brendan.
And Hannah, you can skip to whatever slide you want because some of the slides might be out of order, so you can just, if you want to do it that way. Awesome, thanks.
Okay, that's all right. So, no, that was a good segue, just because, I found in my last practicum that at my particular school, the DGSB is really trying to push anything with Microsoft Office, and that includes OneNote. It includes OneNote and includes using the cloud to upload data so students can have access to it at home and not just be able to work on it at school. So For the DDSB in particular, which is applicable to us, we all live in the Durham region. So they're really trying to push the Microsoft Office stuff. They're saying it can be used in high school for like really heavy researching. But I know for us elementary and PJ teachers, they're really trying to encourage it for grade 4, 5, and 6, and anything up for that. So the junior division, they're really trying to get students started on being able to do their own individual research, put their own personalization to projects and stuff like OneNote. The sharing from student to student is really easy, so this promotes collaboration. The student can interact with the teacher in terms of feedback, which is really great. So it pushes us toward that collaborative space that I think the Durham District School Board really is trying to implicate. So that kind of takes care of that side. Just from different kinds of perspectives coming from all sorts of people. One teacher candidate did say they also noticed that the DDSB is openly promoting the use of OneNote to its staff. They do have a link on their website that will teach you a little bit about how to use OneNote, because like you said, Brendan, it's such a big program that it can be really difficult and overwhelming to learn at first, so the tutorial link is great. One of the biggest differences, another quote here, between Evernote and OneNote is the way you organize your notes, and again, that feedback is really great. Organization in Evernote is 3 levels deep. You got notebook stacks, notebooks, notes. So in terms of organization, it could be a little bit more difficult. OneNote, however, has 6 levels of organization. That's why the learning curve is a little bit more difficult for the OneNote, but we still recommend it. And I think Kristina is going to talk a little bit more about why we recommend it, in particular for this class, and its inclusivity, and then a little bit of the cons and drawbacks. So Kristina, take it away.
Perfect. So when we're looking at inclusion and the skills that come along with using OneNote, in terms of inclusivity, it does work to help learners with hearing exceptionalities, also those with speech impairment exceptionalities. And in terms of skills and articulation skills, this is like a big assistive tool for them. It also helps promote active listening skills, as well as long-term and short-term memory skills. So for those who are struggling with those kind of exceptionalities, it's a great tool to assist them. It's also a great tool as far as organization goes. It just helps students keep things organized as far as like putting them in folders, putting them in labels, and allowing them to access each other's folders. So in that sense, it does really help them focus as far as organization. Looking at some of the cons or the drawbacks of using OneNote, it is only free for Microsoft Office, so if you're working off of a Mac computer, you're not going to probably have access to that. There's a 500 note limit, so you need to really make short notes in that case, so students might struggle with that if there are students who are maybe not so concise with their note taking. It takes students a long time to use different functions. So just as far as navigating and learning how to use OneNote, it might be a little tricky at first. Like Hannah had mentioned, there was kind of a whole link on Durham District School Board with an instructional PDF on just how to use OneNote, so it might take the students a bit longer just to wrap their minds around how to navigate the software. Finally, OneNote has so many avenues and functions that the learning curve can be high, like we talked about. So yeah, I'm going to pass it off to Sam now.
Thank you. So because of the time restraints of our video, because I'm sure we've already gone over time, there's so many other things about OneNote we could have said, like there's even collaboration spaces on OneNote for teachers and students, like there's a collaboration space, a classroom library, student spaces, like there's so many ways to organize OneNote, and it's so versatile. And in conclusion, that's why we thought that OneNote would be better than Evernote when it comes to a truly inclusive, personalizable